I therefore offer my obeisances unto you, who are the greatest of all transcendentalists, and I inquire from you as to the relationship between man and woman and between spirit and matter. And that's a real statement right there. Uh, only a transcendental devotee would be able to ask a question like that. And also at the same time glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sankhya philosophy is as well known, Sankhya philosophy, as is well known, deals with Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti means the material nature, and Purusha means the enjoyer. Purusha is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or anyone who imitates the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an enjoyer. And Prakriti means nature. In this material world, material nature is being exploited by the Purushas, or the living entities. The intricacies, so actually, there's only one real Purusha, that's Krishna, but in the material world, there's so many people that are acting like the enjoyer. So it says the intricacies in the material world of the relationship of the Prakriti, meaning material nature, and Purusha, the living entities, or the enjoyed and the enjoyer, is called samsara, or material entanglement. Devahuti wanted to cut the tree of material entanglement. And, I'm sorry, and she found the suitable weapon in Kapila Muni. The tree of material existence is explained in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as an asvatthama tree, whose root is upwards and whose branches are downwards. It is recommended there that one has to cut the root of this material existential tree with the axe of detachment. What is the attachment? The attachment involves Prakriti and Purusha. Okay, so Prakriti means material nature, and Purusha means the enjoyer. The living entities are trying to lord it over material nature. Since the conditioned soul takes material nature to be the object of his enjoyment, and he takes the position of the enjoyer, he is therefore called Purusha, the enjoyer. Devahuti questioned Kapila Muni, for she knew that only he could cut her attachment to the material world. The living entities in the guises, or meaning they're dressed up like men, the living entities in the guises of men and women are trying to enjoy the material energy. Therefore, in one sense, everyone is Purusha because Purusha means enjoyer and Prakriti means enjoy. In this material world, both the so-called man and so-called woman are imitating the real Purusha, the Supreme Personality of God. Okay, I'll read that again. The living entities in the guises, or they're dressed up like men and women, are trying to enjoy the material energy. Therefore, in one sense, everyone is Purusha because Purusha means enjoyer and Prakriti means enjoyed. In this material world, both the so-called man and so-called woman are imitating the real Purusha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. the real Purusha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually the enjoyer in the transcendental sense, whereas all others are Prakriti. The living entities are considered Prakriti, meaning being enjoyed. So you see, uh, how does one identify himself or herself? Well, there's Prakriti and meaning the enjoyed, and Purusha, the enjoyer. So the real enjoyer is Krishna, and the false enjoyer is the living entity. But nowadays, everyone's trying to be the enjoyer, the Purusha, and they want to enjoy everything in the material world. But everything in the material world belongs to Krishna. It doesn't belong to us. So we are the false enjoyer. The real enjoyer is Krishna. While acting as the false enjoyer, we become conditioned under the control, in other words, of the material nature, and we forget our relationship with Krishna. That is our real position now. And the whole point is Devahuti, she wants to cut the tree of material entanglement. In other words, no longer thinking of herself as the Purusha, but to think of herself as Prakriti, the enjoyed. Right? And she wants to cut the tree of material entanglement. And she found the suitable weapon, how to cut this tree, in Kapila Muni, who's an incarnation of Krishna, and her son. Okay, so it says here, go back to this. Devahuti questioned Kapila Muni, for she knew that only he, meaning her son, Kapila Muni, who's an incarnation of Krishna, only he could cut her attachment to this material world. The living entities, in the guise, in other words, they are dressed up falsely, of men and women, are trying to enjoy the material energy. Therefore, in one sense, everyone is Purusha, because Purusha means enjoyer, and Prakriti means enjoyed. In this material world, both the so called men and so called women are imitating the real Purusha, meaning the real enjoyer. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually the enjoyer in the transcendental sense, whereas all others are Prakriti. Now, I mean, this is a major statement that Devahuti is making. What statement is she making? She's praying to Krishna, I don't want to be the enjoyer anymore. I want to be the enjoyed. I want to be your servant. I want to be your devotee and give you all the enjoyment. You know, that's the only thing that'll give me, let's say, satisfaction. Well, that's a major change in consciousness from trying to be the enjoyer to accepting to be the enjoyed. And she's making this major statement here. She says that I have taken shelter of your lotus feet because you are the only person of whom to take shelter. You are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. So that's called a metaphor. Uh, have you ever heard of a person being an axe? No. But here she's comparing the Lord to an axe that can cut the tree of material existence. So, what is that tree of material existence? It's the aswatama. What is it called? Aswa. What did you say? Ashwata. Yeah, aswata tree. Uh, so, uh, she's using these metaphors now. The metaphor is referring to something that normally uh, is not, they're replacing a normal word with another word to give emphasis. So when uh, she says that you are the axe that can free me from this entanglement, uh, she's talking to her son as if he is an axe that can chop down the tree of material enjoyment. Okay, so that what are axes are used for? Axes are used for chopping trees, chopping things. So she wants Krishna to chop down her attachment to sense gratification so she can completely be prakriti, the enjoyed, rather than trying to be purusha. Everybody's trying to be purusha, men and women today are trying to be purushas, the enjoyer. But actually, the only real enjoyer is Krishna. So she's come to that realization, which is very exceptional because most people, they want to be the enjoyer. They don't want to be the enjoyed. And then traditionally, it was always understood that man is an enjoyer and the woman is the enjoyed. But today, both the men and the women want to be the enjoyer. And both are wrong. The only real enjoyer is Krishna, and we should be the enjoyed by offering devotional service. Okay, so the tree of material existence is explained in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as an asvata tree, whose root is upwards and whose branches are downwards. Well, have you ever seen a tree whose roots are upward and whose branches are downward? Yeah, if you go on the edge of a river and it's a sunny day, it looks like the tree, the reflection of the tree in the water. It looks like the root is upward and the branches are downward. Right? Well, that's not a correct vision of the tree, but it looks like that. So, therefore, it says the tree of material existence is explained in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as an asvata tree, whose root is upwards and whose branches are downward. It is recommended. So, in other words, it's something that is illusory. The only place you'll see a tree whose roots are upward and whose uh, top of the tree is downward is when you look at the reflection of a tree in, let's say, a river or a pond. Uh, so it's an illusory vision, right? So here it says the tree of material existence is explained in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as an asvata tree whose root is upwards and whose branches are downwards. It is recommended there that one has to cut the root of this material existential tree with the axe of detachment. Why? Because it's something illusory, but we consider it to be real. What is the attachment? The attachment involves prakriti and purusha. Prakriti means material nature, purusha means enjoyer. The living entities are trying to lord it over material nature. Hence, the conditioned soul takes material nature to be the object of his enjoyment, and he takes the position of the enjoyer. He is therefore called Purusha. So, this is an illusion. Uh, Almost everyone thinks that they are the enjoyer in this world. Like, for example, when you go to see a movie, even if it's a horror movie, kids like to see horror movies, right? And then if it's a really horror movie, they start screaming, in the movie, ah, like that, right? And that's called entertainment. Yeah, kids say, "Oh, I want to see a scary movie." You ever want to see a scary movie? You never wanted to see a scary. Did you ever want to see a scary movie? No. A lot of kids like to see scary movies. And when they see it, they start screaming. Right? So, any of your friends ever say that they want to see a scary movie?
There are a lot of movies getting released in this month,
Yeah,
which are scary.
yeah, because it's Halloween. Yeah, yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I always do Krishnaween.
We did long time back, Maharaj.
Yeah, we used to do Krishnaween. Yeah,
It was fantastic.
which is not scary.
Not scary and very nice.
Halloween is scary. People dressed up like ghosts. Skeleton. They have a skeleton outfit on. And they say trick or treat.
And not limiting to themselves, Maharaj, they are decorating the homes outside
Yeah,
with like so many
they
scary.
put up cobwebs. Artificial cobwebs outside. In the tree of the house, and they have hobgoblins. And all kinds of scary things. Yeah, you can see how uh, the culture of a nation depends on the different iconic things that uh, you know they believe in. So when there's Halloween, they'll put up a ghost-like person or a skeleton, right, in their front porch or in the front yard, and some cobwebs, artificial cobwebs. This cobwebs are what the saliva of the uh,
Yeah.
yeah, spider. Because if you walk into a very old house, there could be a lot of cobwebs, right? And that's where usually ghosts are, right? So they try and imitate that. So in front of their house, they'll buy this artificial cobweb, right? And they'll put a ghost like or a skeleton image. And then the kids know, oh, we can go to this house and get some candy, right? Because that means, okay, you can come to the house and say trick or treat, and we'll give some candy to it. And then they collect a huge amount of candy. And then when they come home, they hide it underneath their bed and start eating it little by little every day and get really sick. You know, they get sick for about 6 months eating that candy, because the candy is all junk candy. Uh, but this is what's going on, and they come back home with, all these different types of candies, and people have a big, plate of candies, every kid that comes, they give them some candy. Did you ever do that? Yeah. Yeah.
So, Maharaj, last few years,
Yeah.
what we have tried is instead of putting candies, we were putting the goodness cookies
Yeah.
outside, and kids were liking.
Liking it a lot better. Yeah. And candy is nonsense food, so it has, oftentimes when they make candy, there are a lot of junk, ingredients in it, and it's not good for the kids. But a goodness cookie, now we're talking about real science. Honey bowl. Okay, and it says here, um, the intricacies in the material world of the relationship of the prakriti and purusha, or the enjoyed and the enjoyer, is called samsara, or material entanglement. So it's a very interesting statement. It says the intricacies. Okay, so look up the word intricacies. It means some of the like spirit, some of the uh, uh, complicated things. Intricacy means something that's complicated, and not understood.
Complex and detailed aspects
Yeah,
that require often careful examination or deep understanding to grasp fully.
right.
The nuances,
What?
hidden layers, subtle details.
Yes. So, in other words, you might see something uh, and make a quick decision on what it is, but when you look more carefully, you realize you made a mistake. Now you're looking at the intricacies of that thing, you know. Uh, okay, so it is recommended there that one has to cut the root of the material existential tree. Existential is a nice word. It means existence, how things exist. Look the word up, existential. The tree of material existence is explained in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as an aswatha tree, whose root is upward and whose branches are downwards. It is recommended there that one has to cut the root of this material existential tree with the axe of detachment. Okay, what's the meaning of existential? Something that exists. Okay.
Particularly human existence and conditions that define it.
Right. So when Prabhupada says it is recommended there that one has to cut the root of this material existential tree with the axe of detachment. Now, these are metaphors. So, what is the axe of detachment? And Prabhupada says next, what is the attachment? The attachment involves Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti meaning material nature, and Purusha. So when it says the axe, what is the axe? The axe is the instructions of the spiritual master. It's the only way that you can become free uh, of attachment to material things. So, uh, and Prakriti means material nature or what is enjoyed, and Purusha means the enjoyer. The living entities are trying to lord it over material nature. That means they're trying to be the enjoyers of the material nature. Since the conditioned soul takes material nature to be the object of his enjoyment, and he takes the position of the enjoyer, he is therefore called Purusha. Purusha with a small p means that he is falsely pretending to be the Purusha. Now, everybody, a little kid just from beginning of life thinks he's the Purusha, you see. How did he learn that? Well, it's from previous life experiences where he was always trying to be the Purusha. And most people go through life trying to be the Purusha, the enjoyer of things. But actually, that's false. The only real enjoyer is Krishna. And if we want to offer all our services to Krishna for his enjoyment, then we experience real satisfaction when Krishna is enjoyed. That's why we have what's called darshan. The devotees are nicely dressed and so forth. And when they open the devotees, we feel real enjoyment in seeing how beautifully the devotees, the deities are decorated with garlands and jewels and different things. And that gives us a great feeling of satisfaction, seeing how nicely the devotee is dressed. And we chant and dance when the curtain opens and there's first darshan of the devotee of the day. So, uh, are we taking the position of the enjoyer when we're looking at the deity? Good question. Actually, we should always think of ourselves as the enjoyed. And when the curtain opens, we bow down to the deity, and we're very happy to see, how the deity is dressed and the different, uh, colors of the clothing and the jewelry and all these different things that we notice. But it gives us deep satisfaction seeing how nicely the deity is dressed. Right? Um, the more the nicer the deity is dressed, the more satisfaction the devotee feels. So that satisfaction of seeing the deity of Krishna nicely dressed purifies the consciousness of the devotee. But looking at the deity and bowing down to the deity means that as soon as the curtain opens, everybody bows down. That means we're recognizing that the deity is the Purusha and we are the servants of the deity. If you don't bow down, it means you haven't understood that the deity is the real enjoyer and Purusha, and we are the enjoyed. Why do we go to have darshan? Actually, the real darshan is Krishna sees us. It's not that we see Krishna. Krishna sees us. And that's why we should bow down right away and acknowledge that Krishna is the Purusha and he is the seer and we are the seen. If someone doesn't bow down, that means they're considering themselves the seer and the Lord is the seen. But it's the opposite. It should be the opposite, that we bow down because we are the seen and the Lord is the real seer. Okay, so the attachment, it is recommended that one has to cut the root of the material existential tree. That means there's something that's existing and it's a material tree. What is the material tree? It's all the material desires we have for sense gratification. That's called the material tree. But these are metaphors. Metaphors are words that are used in place of normal explanation of something by using a different word for that thing. So here, Prabhupada says, the material existential tree with the acts of detachment. So what is the material existential tree? It doesn't mean that there's a real tree. It means that all the uh, things that we're attached to and we give a lot of, let's say, service to, and it's all illusory. It's all illusory. Like, for example, someone may buy a baseball hat, right? They put the hat on and they feel very happy, They have a, what do you call it? Uh, what's the name of uh, the um, the baseball uh, team in Seattle.
Mariner.
Yeah, you get a Mariners hat. So that's some kind of an identification you make. You're a Mariner aficionado. Look that word up. It's a really good word. Aficionado. Yeah. An aficionado, something that accepts something else as very, very important in their life, or they're an expert in something. So, what do? If they're a mariner's aficionado? Well, one thing they do is they collect sports cards. sport cards, the cards with the name and the picture of the team members. And it gives you all this information about, in 1970, they're hitting, let's say, they got a 300 hitting
Home runs.
home runs is what this thing and that thing. You get all the information, of what they did, and then it's a picture of the person. And people collect those cards, and over time, those cards become more valued, right?
Mhm.
And then they trade those cards, and sometimes there's a card that could be worth, like $100. You got it for 10 cents. Now it's worth $100. So they trade these the baseball cards and football cards and so forth. Do you ever collect any? Do you have any friends that collect those cards? No, nobody does it anymore.
We should create cards for
Krishna card.
Krishna cards.
Yeah.
Maybe in the Vedic school, that's a good idea. Dovetail their tendency to collect cards. I mean, like,
Well, they'll have to make the cards.
yeah, somebody will have to design the cards. So then it will be like, what is the greatest of Krishna? Right?
Different names of Krishna.
Yeah. How many demons he killed.
And the qualities of that incarnation. Many years back, I was thinking what the same by looking at Pokemon cards, very popular, more than these player cards. Pokemon, like almost every other kid is playing. So they have Pokemon, and then their qualities there, power, like how much power it has, and so we can have Krishna and their Krishna's qualities of that incarnation. Then kids can memorize.
No, don't say we can do. You should say I can do. Everybody said we can do. That means they're not going to do it.
They talked about many years back, still not able to do it.
Well, you can do it. Okay. All right. It says that the tree of material existence is explained in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Let's take a look at the 15th chapter. Now, that's a tree that doesn't really exist, but it helps you to understand how one becomes entangled in the material world. Okay, so 15th chapter is called The Yoga of the Supreme Person. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhva Mulam Ada Sakam Asvatam Prahur Avyayam Chandam Si Yaschaparnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable, meaning something that can never die, banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Now, there's never been a tree with the roots upward and the branches downward, right? But if you see the reflection of a tree that's growing near the or right next to a river, you can see the reflection of that tree in the river, and it looks upside down. So, in other words, it's basically a metaphor of how people misunderstand their position in the material world. They see things upside down. After the discussion of the importance of bhakti, this is the purport. After the discussion of the importance of bhakti yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas. The entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. Now, why do they use the banyan tree to represent entanglement in the material world? Because banyan trees they have many branches that grow downward and root. And once they root, you can't tell the difference between the original trunk and all the other downward rooted branches that look like also the original root of the tree. Okay, so the entanglement of this material is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, activities for sense gratification, there is no end to the banyan tree. Yeah, when you see a big banyan tree, they have some, you can see, they're as big as a whole city, uh, uh, a whole city block. And some, I mean, how big is a city block? It's pretty big, right? And the tree has produced, the banyan tree has produced many, many branches that grow downward and root. And now you can't tell what's the original banyan tree and what are the newly rooted branches that grow downward and root. So you can't really tell where's the banyan tree begin from. Because most the trees, they grow up, right? But the banyan tree, yeah, it grows up and then it starts having a lot of branches that go down and also root, also grow downward into the soil. Now you can't tell which was the original, uh, let's say, a banyan tree.
The original trunk versus.
Yeah, the original trunk of the banyan tree, because the other branches grew downward and rooted. So the entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree. He wanders from one branch to another, and to another. The tree of this material world has no end. And for one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation. The Vedic hymns meant for elevating oneself are called the leaves of this tree. This tree's roots grow upward because they begin from where Brahma is located, the topmost planet of this universe. If one can understand this indestructible tree of illusion, then one can get out of it. This is a very profound statement. Say, the process of extrication, you mean the process to get out of the illusion of the false banyan tree of existence, should be understood. In the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. And up to the 13th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. Okay, now I can ask a question. How many kids in my class are engaged in attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord? Answer, 0. They're attached to baseball cards, or they're attached to different kinds of different things that are for sense gratification. They're not attached to Krishna. Okay. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter. The root of this material existence grows up. This means that it begins from the total material substance from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded with so many branches representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represent the results of the living entity's activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Now, there is no ready experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and its roots upward. But there is such a thing. That tree can be found beside a reservoir of water. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect upon the water with their branches down and roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, such as a tree's reflection is situated on water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through the analytical study. And analytical means you are able to study all the different parts of something so that you can understand what it actually is. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. This tree, being the reflection of the real tree, is an exact replica. Everything is there in the spiritual world. The impersonalists take Brahman to be the root of this material tree. And from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, come Prakriti, Purusha, then the three gunas, then the five gross elements, Pancha Mahabhuta, then the 10 senses, Dasendriya, then mind, etc. In this way, they divide up the whole material world into 24 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestations, then this material world is a manifestation of the center by 180 degrees. Basically, this means, it sounds a little bit complicated, but basically it means people see everything backwards or upside down. They see a reflection, they don't see the real thing. And the other 180 degrees constitute the spiritual world. The material world is the perverted reflection, so the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality. So everything we're seeing in this world today is a reflection of what's existing in the spiritual world, but it's upside down. And it's falsely, let's say, understood. So in the spiritual world, there are people, there's dancing, there's chanting, and all these different things. And in the material world, we also see people dancing, and we also see, airplanes, and we also see cars, and we also see people, but it's all upside down. And it's actually illusory. Why? Because everything in the material world is temporary. So we become bewildered and we don't see the real reality, which is in the spiritual world. We see the so-called reflection of it in darkness. Now, what does that mean? Reflection in darkness. Well, first of all, we're seeing things upside down in the material world and in darkness. So that means we can't actually see it properly. And therefore, we become misled and entrapped by material attachments to temporary things. Okay. So let's see. Okay. So it says, now it gets more detail. The impersonalists take Brahman to be the root of this material tree. And from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, come Prakriti, Purusha, then the three gunas, then 5 gross elements, Pancha Mahabhutas, then the 10 senses, Dasendriya, mind, etc. In this way, they divide up the whole material world into 24 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestations, then this material world is a manifestation of the center by 180 degrees. In other words, we're seeing everything topsy-turvy, upside down. See? It's just like you can see a reflection in a river, topsy-turvy. If there's a tree and on the bank of a river, if you look at the reflection of the tree, it's upside down. So that's the way we're actually seeing. We're not seeing the real thing. The material world is the perverted reflection, meaning upside down reflection. So the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality. So everything we're seeing here is an upside down reflection of what's in the spiritual world. The Prakriti, meaning material nature, is the external energy of the Supreme Lord, and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself. Purusha means the enjoyer of the external energy. And that is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Since this manifestation is material, it is temporary. A reflection is temporary, for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence or from where the reflection is reflected is eternal. The main reflection of the real tree has to be cut off. When it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. If one knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. One who is attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas is, as disclosed by the personality God in himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. But this is full of metaphors to try and explain what our position should really be in this material world. We should lose all our attraction to material sense gratification and replace that with desire to please Krishna. Then we cut that tree of material attachment and we can now function as a devotee. As long as there is attraction to something material for sense gratification, we're not seeing things correctly. We're seeing a reflection, an upside down, dark reflection of the real thing. And Prabhupada says, a reflection is temporary, for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence is an old English word, from whence, it means from where, the reflection is reflected is eternal. Okay, that means the spiritual world. So everything we see in the material world is an upside down reflection of what's in the spiritual world, right? It's an upside down reflection in darkness of what we see in the spiritual world. A reflection is temporary, for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence, meaning from where, the reflection is reflected is eternal. Material reflection of the real tree has to be cut off. When it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. If one knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. One who is attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the personality God himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. Okay, so whatever attraction we have to material things should be cut off and replaced by attraction to the beautiful form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And every day, that beautiful form is dressed with nice clothing. Every day, we bow down to that beautiful form of Krishna. Every day, we offer food, and it turns into prasadam, is offered back with the mercy of the Lord. Every day we chant, we bow down, we chant. And in this way, we're cutting down the false banyan tree, and now we're seeing the real banyan tree. So when it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. That's a major statement. Cut off attachment to this material world. And that means that we're not attracted to anything material anymore. We're attracted only by Krishna. One who knows that process, he actually knows the Veda. One who is attracted to the ritualistic formulas of the Veda is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Veda. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the personality of God himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. Okay, so when we see these pundits, they're saying so many different mantras and performing so many different pujas or you call types of performances. Yeah, that is still attraction to the tree of illusion. The real thing is chanting Hare Krishna, which is the only mantra that we can properly say in this age, and the only process by which we can actually be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. Everything else is incomplete and is not enough to liberate us from the cycle of birth and death. So we have to cut attachment to the false reflection, and it's an upside down reflection of the banyan tree, and see the actual tree. So the actual tree is the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master. So the bona fide spiritual master tells us to chant Hare Krishna and to take only prasadam and to dance and chant the glories of the Lord. And so if you go to a Mayavadi temple, there's no deity, and everybody is silently meditating. It's a little spooky. And then after their meditation, they start talking and they say, well, I meditated, 1 hour, I'm getting better at this. So obviously what they're implying is that real advancement in their path of silent meditation is to meditate 24 hours a day. Of course, they can't do that. They can meditate maybe 1 hour or 2 hours in silence. And so the whole process is impossible to actually achieve the real goal, which is to completely lose attraction to the material world and prepare oneself to go back to the spiritual world. So to do that through meditation, one would have to meditate 24 hours a day. Nobody can do that. Nobody I know can do that. So it's an undoable goal. There's 10 minutes in the morning meditation and 10 minutes at night meditation is not going to help you go anywhere. It's going to help you stay in the material world, but it's not going to solve the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease. So There are a lot of dead-end philosophies. A dead end means it stops somewhere and you don't really get to the destination you're trying to get to. It's a dead end. So this, silent meditation as the way to attain liberation from birth and death is false. You can do it. You might get some satisfaction out of doing that, but it doesn't really solve the problem of how to go back to the spiritual world. You can only go back to the spiritual world through devotion, not through silence. The whole Vedic literature is not based on silence. It's something that is spoken, right? And Krishna, when he saw Arjuna, he didn't stay silent. He spoke to him and gave him knowledge. So this whole concept of silent meditation is actually nonsense, because no one can stay silent for 24 hours a day or for the rest of their life. And that means that they can't really attain the goal of going back to Godhead, because they'll meditate 1 hour, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours, but then they'll go back to talking and going back to making plans for parties and making plans for eating this and eating that and buying a new car and so forth. So that meditation is incomplete. If they sit in a dark room or in a cave and they meditate 24 hours a day, then, which is recommended, which is the goal for the silent meditators, then they might make a little bit of advancement, but not much. I don't know anybody that sits in a cave 24 hours a day and meditates. There might be a few people, maybe you can count them on your fingers, right, in the world. So the whole process is not possible to attain the actual goal of going back to Godhead. All right. So the purpose of the Vedas is as disclosed by the persona of God himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual. That's our takeaway from today. The real tree in the spiritual world is Krishna's words. Krishna is the way to show that you're making spiritual advancement is you follow Krishna's instruction. What are his instructions? Eat only prasadam and chant Hare Krishna. It's made very simple in this age. Eat only prasadam and chant Hare Krishna and associate with genuine devotees. So that way you can cut down the reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Haribol, Haribol, Haribol.
One way to I connected today was that we say we are the marginal energy, kind of move between the spiritual world and material world. But another way to probably also relate to that is that we tend to oscillate between Prakriti and Purusha.
Okay.
So when we try to be Purusha, then we are in this material world.
Yes.
And if we get to realize that we are actually Prakriti, which is the servant,
Yes.
the Supreme Lord, then suddenly we're on the other side,
On the right side.
on the right side.
There's the right side and the wrong side.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's why we're reading this. We are actually Prakriti, we are not Purusha. But everybody believes they're Purusha,
Mhm.
men and women. Previously, women used to think they're Prakriti, no longer. They want to be Purusha also. So everything is upside down, let's put it like that. When everybody, men and women, consider themselves to be Purusha, Prakriti, then that's the right consciousness. Prakriti means what is enjoyed, and Purusha means the enjoyer. So, Prakriti is the external energy of the Supreme Lord, and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself. But when we substitute ourselves as the Supreme Lord and enjoyer, then we're in complete Maya. But unfortunately, most people think that they are the enjoyer. They're not the Prakriti, the enjoyed. And because of that, people go through a whole life thinking they are the enjoyers. And at the moment of death, they are shocked to see Yamaraj. Whoa. And at that point, they realize, oh my God, I made a mistake my whole life. I thought I was the enjoyer. And then they have to suffer. Suffering is remedial, let's say, strategy to help people understand that they have made mistakes. So whenever we're suffering, you have a toothache, you have a headache, you have cancer, you have this, well, that's a message that we have made some mistakes in the way we're living, the way we're thinking. So we have to correct it. And how do you correct it? By hearing transcendental knowledge from bona fide devotees. So whenever we suffer, it's because we made some mistakes. And whenever we're engaged in devotional service, all those mistakes are being gradually erased one by one. The more we engage in devotional service, the more those mistakes are going to be erased. And then now you feel transcendental pleasure in devotional service. If you don't feel any pleasure or transcendental pleasure in devotional service, it's because of strong, very strong attachments, the strong knot of material attraction and material sense gratification. You just cannot give up sense gratification. So you don't feel, happy chanting Hare Krishna. You're thinking of sense gratification, or one is thinking of sense gratification all the time. But when you break that attachment to sense gratification, now you can experience transcendental pleasure in devotional service. But not being the Purusha, but being the Prakriti. Okay, so the Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti means what is enjoyed, or the servant of the Lord, and Purusha means the enjoyer. The only enjoyer is Krishna. So when we substitute ourselves as the enjoyer, we're in complete illusion. When we accept that Krishna is the enjoyer and we do everything to please the Lord, at that time we have become real Prakriti, which is the enjoyed, and we use all our energy to please Krishna, the real enjoyer. So we see how everything is backwards in this world today. Everyone's trying to be the enjoyer. And because of that, they unnecessarily suffer. Yeah, like for example, let's say there's a man that kidnaps a woman and rapes her many times. He's trying to be the enjoyer. He doesn't think, oh, this woman belongs to Krishna. And Krishna is the real enjoyer, not me. So I should respect this woman as a potential servant of the Lord. And I shouldn't touch her or in any way defile her. She doesn't belong to me. Every woman, every man also is the servant of Krishna, is Prakriti. And Krishna is the real Purusha, the enjoyer. As soon as one wants to forget that Krishna is the enjoyer, and they try to make themselves the enjoyer, themselves the person who exploits others for their own sense gratification. You see, so they completely upside down the understanding of who they really are, and they start acting in these very strange ways of trying to control people and exploit people. a kidnapper. He kidnaps a woman or he kidnaps a child, and now he has complete control of that person, and that's complete ignorance. And but it happens a lot. So we are all the servants. We are not the enjoyers. We are the enjoyed, and our goal is to please Krishna. Hare Krishna. That's our takeaway for today. Instead of being the Purusha, we are the Prakriti. Hare Bol. Hare Bol.
So we will again see you in the evening. Right. Any questions or comments?
They don't teach us in school that we are Prakriti, we're not Purusha. But you can see how much emphasis Krishna is putting on this in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he says, Sankhya philosophy, as is well known, deals with Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha is the Supreme Personality Godhead, or anyone who imitates the Supreme Personality Godhead as an enjoyer. And Prakriti means nature. In this material world, material nature is being exploited by the Purushas, or the living entities. The intricacies in the material world of the relationship of the Prakriti and Purusha, or the enjoyed and the enjoyer, is called samsara, or material entanglement. Devahuti wanted to cut the tree of material entanglement, and she found the suitable weapon in Kapila Muni. Wow, tremendous statement by Prabhupada. Hari Bol, Hari Bol.